Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The routes for the second stage of the new HS2 high-speed rail network have been confirmed. Trains will run from Birmingham on 2 lines, some on already existing tracks, one serving the northwest and major cities like Manchester and Liverpool, the other serving the East Midlands up to Leeds and York. The first trains are not expected to run until 2026. For years there have been disagreements about exactly which route the line should take. Now, some properties on a new housing estate in Mexborough in South Yorkshire will have to be bulldozed to make way for it. Here's our transport correspondent, Richard Westcott.
It's the train line that splits people right down the middle. For supporters, it'll boost the economy and bridge the north-south divide. Critics say costs will spiral and benefits are overblown. And then there's the £56 billion price tag.
If we don't have the capital investment we need for the future to increase the capacity of our transport system to support economic development, we won't carry on with the progress we've made that's brought unemployment down to the lowest level since the 1970s.
Contracts have just been awarded for the first phase of HS2 between London and Birmingham, worth nearly £7 billion and creating 16,000 jobs. That first section won't open for another 9 years. There's been another big HS2 announcement today. Several years late, they have finally put out the route that goes from Birmingham up to Manchester on one side and Sheffield and Leeds on the other. And it goes right through this brand new housing estate. In fact, it goes right through Ben's house.
Essentially, the route that we've been told is going to cut through from the show houses, through my property, through my neighbour's property and straight through into the very far corner of the estate. Why weren't we told when we bought the properties on the searches? Why build a full brand new housing estate and then potentially knock it down when we're short of houses as it is already? Where do we then move to? We're just in limbo.
Just over the road from Ben's, the line could also cut through Karen's farm.
Come on, mister.
We spoke to her last year and she was livid.
I am not moving anywhere. I'll fight this till death.
So what about today?
Gutted to think we've put all this over 40 odd years into what we've got.
You were fuming last time we were here. What's happened since then? Have they been to see you?
No, nothing. Nothing. Too much gone into this over years. You know, I could never imagine living anywhere else.
HS2 creates losers, but it makes winners too, like this small digital marketing company in Nottingham.
It'll be easier for us to do business on a national scale. It'll be easier for us to attract clients to our offices here as well, and for us to recruit talent from around the country who would be willing to relocate to a city with better transport links or potentially even commute to Nottingham from other cities.
Walk on, lad.
The first Leeds HS2 train won't depart for another 16 years. Plenty of time for opponents to fight the plans.
Well, we can talk to Richard, who's in Mexborough in South Yorkshire. And Richard, we saw that's where the new line is going to run smack through the middle of that housing estate. So much unhappiness there. But as you said in your piece, there are some winners too.
Yeah, it's always winners and losers with these projects. Everyone's coming home tonight to this letter, and there's a quite a benign kind of phrase in it. We can confirm your property will remain within the area which has been safeguarded to enable future construction of the railway. The words they didn't want to hear. Let me give you an idea of what's going to happen. In the distance there, you should see some trees. Well, the line is going to come straight through there. They've actually stopped building houses there because they knew that was the potential route. It comes all the way across here, and it goes through this gap here. Now, these two houses we think are going to go on the end, but the house next to them and some of the houses down here and the ones over here, well, they stay, and they're potentially going to be near a 20-metre high railway viaduct. So they're coming home to that dreadful news. No one's really quite sure what to do. As you say, HS2 does have its supporters as well. It is very politically popular at the moment. All of the main parties support it, the unions, all the council leaders as well in the cities that are going to benefit. They're all convinced that this is one of the key answers to boost the economy and to bridge that north-south divide. There's going to be very close scrutiny of the costs, concerns that are going to spiral. But when you talk to people who are actually directly affected by the line, their number one complaint is the lack of information, is the waiting for years in limbo, not knowing what's happening to their house. And that is what's happening to many hundreds of people on this estate tonight.
And Richard, we can see someone behind you going in this evening, no doubt, to read exactly that letter. Thank you very much.
Well, one of the big announcements today concerned High Speed 2, details of the northern section of the route and some contractors for the first southern phase were published. HS2 is not a new policy, but it was a perfect way of changing the subject from the government's troubles. Yet even here, there are questions about money and there are divisions in the cabinet. Liam Fox, for example, campaigned against it before he was appointed International Trade Secretary. Earlier today, I sat down with the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, to talk about HS2 and the government's predicament. And I asked him whether he was 100% sure that HS2 was going to happen.
Yes, because the work has actually started already. On the first phase from London to Birmingham, the enabling works are now being done. The contracts we've let today are for the first full part of the work. This is going to happen, but it also has to happen. People tend to misunderstand what HS2 is about. It's a capacity project more than anything else. If you look at the West Coast Main Line, one of the busiest railways of its kind in Europe, congested with commuter trains, freight trains, intermediate trains, express trains. If it's going to be able to cope with the demand that it's going to face in the future, we actually have to move the express trains off onto a different line, get more freight off the roads onto the railways, create more commuter space on the existing railway, and actually do so by building a state-of-the-art new high-speed route that we can be proud of.
Right, but you don't know the final cost, and there are reports that the cost may be way higher than is currently being talked about. So in a way, by saying it's definitely going to happen without knowing the cost, you are saying we will pay whatever it takes.
Well, of course, we know what it's going to cost. It's going to cost £55.7 million. And what we billion pounds. We have a good track record.
That until you've got builders to say they will build it and guarantee that price. You don't know it's going to be that much.
Look, we've got a pretty good track record in this country in recent years. Just look at Crossrail, biggest engineering project of its kind in Europe. That's going well, it's on time, it's on budget. It proves that we in this country can deliver things. And the reports going around in the last few days have been utterly spurious. The argument that this is somehow going to cost 5 times as much as HS1, coming from people who have no involvement in the project at all, I'm afraid I don't take this seriously at all.
So you are saying on this issue, there is complete clarity at the heart of government, Treasury, Cabinet, policymakers and civil servants. This is going to happen, it must happen, and everybody's on board.
And not only that, it is happening now.
Right. Is it your contention that in other areas, the government is as decisive and as clear about the direction it's going to take?
Well, so my answer to that is yes. What I think people look at is, does the Cabinet ever have discussions and debates? Yes, of course we do. We're not clones. We have different views sometimes. We argue the case, we put forward our views, we reach a consensus and we move ahead with it. And that's the way government should work.
I have been confused on quite a few areas as to what the policy is. Let's start with one of yours, not rail, third runway at Heathrow. Is that definitely going to happen?
Yes, we are in the middle of what is a 12-month process that leads to what is effectively outline planning permission. It's set out in statute, set out in the 2008 Planning Act. It involves a period of public consultation we're going through at the moment. We've just completed that, in fact. There's then a period of parliamentary scrutiny, slightly delayed because of the general election, because the Transport Committee has to be reconstituted. But we will bring this to a vote in the first part of next year. We'll table those proposals formally for Parliament to approve in the first part of next year. And as long as Parliament approves it, and I believe it will, then the project will go ahead.
Okay, so no backtracking on that.
No
one.
backtracking on that.
You've sorted out my confusion on that one. Let's take a different one. Public sector pay. The policy as expressed was a 1% cap through to the year 2019-20. Does that remain the government's policy?
As of today, that is the case. I know that we've had debates and discussions in the public arena politically about this. We have to find the right balance. So one of the things I am proudest of, that our economic policy over the last 7 years has led to the lowest unemployment since the 1970s. That's real progress. Youth unemployment has pretty much halved. I don't want to lose that progress by letting go of the policies that have delivered it. But at the same time, all of us want to spend more money on public services, all of us want to spend more money on public sector pay. Government is about getting the balance between the two right. Now, as to what exactly we do, we've had a number of messages from different circles in the last few weeks. As to what we actually do, we'll have to see when the budget comes. Right. But as of today, we are determined to see through a policy that brings down our deficit, and we're going to carry on with that focus of bringing down our deficit and making sure we continue the progress we've made.
Not quite the clarity on that one that you had on HS2 and third runway. Let's take another one. What is the policy, the aspiration or the expectation on a transitional arrangement with the EU? We've had Liam Fox saying, well, it might have to be a few months. We've had the Chancellor saying, it's not going to be a couple of months. We're talking about something more like a couple of years or more. What is the policy on transitional arrangement?
Well, the exact detail of the transition from in to out will come out of the negotiations. I can tell you very clearly what the government's policy is on Brexit. We want to bring back control.
Just the policy on the transitional arrangement. Are you basically saying we don't know whether we are seeking a transitional arrangement of 2 months or 2 years? Is that we don't even know what our sort of starting point is on that?
All of this will depend on the position of the European Union and how the negotiations go. It is perfectly plausible that we could leave without a transition arrangement if the agreements were in place for future trade, if the agreements were in place for the kind of partnerships we have in the future.
But you can't really answer the question. I mean, nobody really is expecting for there not to be some transitional arrangement. Well, I think we just don't know what it's going to look like. We've got Liam Fox version, we've got a Philip Hammond version. They're completely different to each other.
It is quite possible that we will end up with a transitional arrangement, but that will depend on the negotiations.
Right. So we've got a third position that we may not have a transitional arrangement. So it's anything from 0 to several years.
By simple, this is a negotiation.
Can you see why the world feels the government is perhaps less clear about its policies than you are about HS2? That in all these areas there has been a confusion on the part of public and business as well.
Well, see, I don't accept the principle of confusion. We've got a very clear objective, which is to leave the European Union, but to leave it on good terms, as good friends and neighbours, with as close as we can possibly secure to the current trading arrangements, where we are the European Union's biggest export market.
Let me ask you one last one. How is Theresa May, and I know she's a friend of yours, you were an early supporter of her in the leadership campaign last year. How is she faring through all of this? Is she coping with the stresses of being buffeted around by so many different pressures?
So if you sat around the cabinet table before the general election and you sat around the cabinet table after the general election, you would see the same person sitting there and the same composed personality sitting there. Yes, we've had some changes in and around Downing Street and changes to some of the ways in which government operates to reflect an understanding of some of the things that went wrong a few months ago. But I see someone who's in control of her brief, who is very much doing the job of Prime Minister, and we'll get on with that and we'll deliver a successful outcome to Brexit, as well as the other things we need to do as a nation.
Chris Green, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Government position there.